up yours.
This is an island surrounded by water, big water, ocean water. Trust me, I'm like a smart person.
I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius.
I had the best words. Tolerated. I know words.
Mike Pounds.
I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation.
But there's no better word than stupid. Anonymous, really anonymous. I'm very highly educated.
One of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
I had the best words.
God bless the United States.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
They call them dumps, big massive dumps.
Around the nation, Waldorf Nation. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Jeff Waldorf. All right, so happy Friday. Let's start off with that. Happy Friday. Made it through another week. You should be proud of yourself for making it again to another Friday. Unless you are, of course, the weekend warrior who works during the weekend, as many of you might actually do, then I'm sorry. I mean, I don't know what else I could say other than you're all amazing for, doing the best you can, living your life, working your asses off, doing what you got to do. Pretty much that. All right, so with that said, we're going to go into some stories. We got Donald Trump, of course. Fun stuff involving yet another loss in court. Fun. We have Ron DeSantis breaking the law, but wait, is he going to get in trouble for it? We have an update on the Ben Shapiro Daily Wire versus Steven Crowder. That debacle. Fun times. We're going to watch that. Let him fight. We also are going to talk about some serious stuff. We have Republicans in Iowa pushing an incredibly draconian bill to restrict food stamps even more. And then finally, we have Democrats that are doing something about, or attempting to do something about, money in politics, but it's a little too late. It's going to go anywhere. Going to do anything. We'll get into it. What do I think it really is about? All right, that's it. We're going to dive into the first story, but before we do, please like, share the stream. Very important that you do so. Helps us out greatly. With that, let's do it. We'll start out with Trump. Former President Donald Trump has been rebuked by a federal judge for wasting his time. Fun. Now, on Thursday night, Judge Donald Middlebrooks of Southern District of Florida hit Trump and his lawyers with $938,000 in sanctions for bringing what Middlebrook had called a completely frivolous lawsuit to his court. So now, look, the details of this are absolutely hilarious. You see, Donald Trump decided back in March that he was going to sue Hillary Clinton. What? What? Why? Well, he had alleged that she and her cohorts had, quote, maliciously conspired to weave a false narrative that their Republican opponent, Donald J. Trump, was colluding with a hostile foreign sovereignty. That foreign entity or sovereignty was Russia. Donald Trump sought $72 million in damages. And I just got to say, what a baby.
Beta male.
Sad. Now, look, I say that because Donald Trump has said far worse things about, well, again, Hillary Clinton. He said far worse things about Democrats, terrible things about black people, women, the FBI. I'm no fan of the FBI, right? But still, there's no end to the list of people that Donald Trump has said horrific things about, and of course, untrue. Nobody really sued him over that. Well, okay, that's not entirely true. E. Jean Carroll is suing Trump for defamation. I think she's got a pretty darn good case that can go forward. And so, that said, when you're talking about Trump and Clinton, they're both public political figures. Now, if you were suing a public figure, or you are a public figure and you're suing for defamation, you have to prove malice. Now, malice is defined as the speaker either knowing that that statement was false or acting with reckless disregard for the truth. Reckless disregard for the truth can also probably be, put under a picture of Donald Trump. For all the massive amounts of lies that he has told, at this point, I don't know who's lied more. Donald Trump or George Santos? Just saying. Very, very, it's a good question. It's because before George Santos, Donald Trump held the number one spot. He's got competition. George Santos also might be the first drag queen in Congress, which actually would be the only good thing that he has ever done. There's that story where he was allegedly a Brazilian drag queen going by the name of Katara. Interesting. But anyway, as I said before, when it comes to defamation lawsuits, there's a pretty high bar for that. And that's because of the First Amendment, it's because of free speech. But for Donald Trump, free speech, he doesn't understand what it means. He thinks that, oh no, it's fine for me. It's free speech for me to say anything I want about anyone else. But when somebody says anything about me, especially about any of the scandals or anything that I've possibly done, no, unacceptable. I'm going to sue you. I'm just going to sue you. Baby. Sad. And once again, let me add.
Beta male. Beta.
Anyway, so that said, bottom line is if you make a statement about a matter of public interest, for example, a political scandal, which is in this case, the whole thing about, the election and Russia and things like that, that was a matter of political public interest, it's likely not to be considered defamatory. Now, that's why Middlebrooks had actually tossed this case back in September. However, the new ruling, now, at the time, he also had fined his lawyers about $50,000 in damages. In his latest ruling, though, Middlebrooks ordered a new round of sanctions, stating that Donald Trump had no business bringing the suit in the first place. Trump's lead attorney, by the way, in the case was Alina Habba, who was sanctioned jointly with her employer. Here's what Middlebrooks wrote. The case should have never been brought. Its inadequacy as a legal claim was evident from the start. No reasonable lawyer would have filed it. Intended for a political purpose, none of the counts of the amended complaint stated a cognizable legal claim. Now, we're going to get to the best part of this one. But first, a lot of that money is going to go to pay the legal bills of 31 defendants named in the suit. Which, again, makes sense because he not only wasted the court's time, but he wasted their time and money getting him to court for this ridiculous, frivolous lawsuit. But again, we don't know how Donald Trump is incredibly litigious, that he goes and sues people and then, nothing happens of it, or they settle or whatever. And so he's used to this, basically. He's used to wasting the time of the courts. That said, the best part here is he has to pay $172,000 to Hillary Clinton. Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Oh yeah.
Now, look, I'm not a Hillary Clinton fan by any stretch of the imagination. Okay. But the fact that Donald Trump tried to sue her, failed, and then has to pay her, that's one of the funniest things I have ever seen. It's awesome. Look, now the statement from the judge, it's even better. In fact, he said, quote, "Here we are confronted with a lawsuit that should have never been filed, which was completely frivolous, both factually and legally, and which was brought in bad faith for an improper purpose." Go on. Mr. Trump is a prolific and sophisticated litigant who is repeatedly using the courts to seek revenge on political adversaries. He is the mastermind of strategic abuse of the judicial process. Now, a lot of that sounds like he is complimenting Donald Trump. Oh, he is a mastermind of strategic abuse. Sophisticated litigant. No, basically it's a fancy way of saying Donald Trump is really good at wasting time. At wasting everyone's time and doing nonsense, ridiculous lawsuits, which end up costing him in the end. Now, I don't think that's very smart. In fact, it sounds kind of stupid. Not a smart person. Not the most tremendously intelligent man. Just saying,
I'm cognitively there.
Are you, though? Really? Now, in a related note, more legal trouble for Trump. Recently, actually earlier today, Trump dropped his $250 million lawsuit against New York Attorney General Letitia James, according to ABC News. The withdrawal comes after U.S. District Judge Donald Middlebrooks warned Trump's legal team that the lawsuit was borderline frivolous. That lawsuit sought to shield Trump's revocable trust from James, who was suing the Trump Organization for fraudulent conduct. So you might want to add this to the pile of losses Donald Trump seems to be racking up. Again, total loser, not doing very well. But I do see a lot of you asking, is he actually going to pay it? Well, I mean, that's a good question, right? Is he going to pay it, or is someone else, is it going to take money from somewhere else to pay it? And again, that's a really, really good question. I honestly don't know the answer to this. And when it comes to rich people actually getting in trouble, and for example, you would never see someone like Donald Trump going to jail for refusing to pay a fine like this. I mean, most likely you would have either Donald Trump, one of his, political allies, or these organizations or donors or whatever, stepping in to pay these legal fees, like we had seen with the RNC. So, I mean, nonetheless, what's really interesting is going after the Trump organization itself. Ultimately, somebody's paying the bills, and at some point, those other people are going to get tired of doing so. And that's the point where it's really going to start to affect him. Either way, I would still watch the walls at Mar-a-Lago and keep him away from the ketchup. Do you think that Ezekiel will allow himself to pay Hillary even if it's through somewhere else or someone else? Again, it's kind of a judge's ruling. It has to be paid. It's against the law if you don't. But then again, I guess when it comes to following the laws, people like Trump tend to get away with it. And we'll move on to the next story. It's a good segue. Remember when the RNC paid his legal bills? I do. I do indeed. Okay. A Florida judge has ruled against Governor Ron DeSantis. Now, on Friday, the Miami Herald reported that U.S. District Judge Robert L. Hinkle had ruled that DeSantis broke the law when he had fired Hillsborough County State Attorney Andrew Warren. So now Warren had been relieved of his duties last August after certain allegations that were made by Ron DeSantis and his team. So now they claim that he had blanket policies and had promised not to prosecute against transgender people and women who get abortions. So he also alleged that Warren's policies had discouraged prosecution of certain low-level misdemeanors in cases arising from police stops of bicyclists. Interesting. Talk about going after the little guy. I thought there were more important things to do for Ron DeSantis. Apparently not. No, apparently, as you're going to see here, this entire case is, well, Ron DeSantis saying this guy is not taking on the woke. Oh, okay. Sure. Now, Judge Hinkle in his ruling had written that this allegation was false. Quote, Mr. Warren's well-established policy, followed in every case by every prosecutor in the office, was to exercise prosecutorial discretion at every stage of every case. Any reasonable investigation would have confirmed this. But understand that Ron DeSantis does not want to be reasonable. Fascists aren't reasonable. He's a fascist. They don't care about the facts, and apparently don't even care about the law. So now, despite concluding that Governor Ron DeSantis did violate the Florida Constitution, as well as the First Amendment, free speech, literally, Judge Hinkle, however, said that he was not able to restore Warren to office. And so it looks like Ron DeSantis gets away with winning in the first place. Even after losing in court. It's amazing. So now, let me get into the details of how this was purely political and how this is a big political win for Ron DeSantis. So now first, Warren's lawyers had presented testimony from a man named Larry Keefe, the governor's public safety czar, who said DeSantis had first asked him in a meeting last December if there were any Florida prosecutors who were allegedly not following the law. Okay? Keefe said that the governor, in a meeting, had railed against woke prosecutors in other states.
The wokers.
Yep, he's talking about the wokers. He's got to go after the woke. Amazing. Keefe said that he said that he had talked to like-minded sheriffs, prosecutors, and Republicans throughout the state. And all of them pointed to Warren, who was an elected Democrat. Well, obviously that guy, he's a Democrat. He must be woke. That's it. We got the woke.
The wokers.
We got to get him. Get rid of him. Get rid of him. So now look, in one of the early drafts of the suspension order, it had contained references to George Soros. See, we got this woke prosecutor. He's getting funded by George Soros. We got to get rid of him. We have to. We don't have a choice. We got to get rid of him. Oh, I know. We'll just say that he's not doing his job. Obviously, political firing. Look, Ron DeSantis wants to break the law. Simple as that. He already did by doing this. And he also wants to go after trans people, after women who get abortions, people who allegedly did voter fraud, even though they were told they could actually vote. But, were lied to because they couldn't. And in order to do that, to go after all of his basically culture war targets, the red meat that he gives to the base that allowed him to get into office in the first place, he needs to have attorneys that play ball. If you do not play ball, you're gone. Look, this doesn't have anything to do with preserving law and order. What he's trying to do is violating people's rights in order to get and keep political power. He is turning Florida into a fascist dictatorship. Look, Andrew Warren, as I mentioned before, he was elected to that position twice by the people of Florida. Ron DeSantis came in and said, no, we don't like you. I don't like you. Dismissed, sir. Dismissed. And then, once he was gone, he put his own person in. Now, who is that person? Well, it turns out Warren's replacement has some issues of her own. So this is a prosecutor by the name of Susan Lopez, and she was appointed to DeSantis to replace Mr. Warren. Lopez had apparently been heavily criticized by her previous supervisor for having some job issues, performance issues at work. Now, an internal memo obtained by the Tampa Bay Times outlined what she had saw. This is the supervisor as ongoing problems with Lopez's performance from 2018 to early 2020, while, of course, she was working under that supervisor. These issues included Lopez's inability to make decisions and to even prepare for and try cases. So she would come to court. She is a prosecutor, and she would come to court completely unprepared. Like, just not able to do her job whatsoever to make a case for the state. I mean, seriously. Anybody would get fired. But instead, Lopez gets elevated after numerous complaints. And so now the only way that Lopez left that position was because Ron DeSantis elevated her to another position, to a county judge position. And then in August had replaced her or appointed her as Warren's replacement as the attorney, the state attorney. And look, she's lazy at her job, allegedly. This, again, according to the people who she had worked for. She had issues. So why would Ron DeSantis basically elevate this person who, again, is apparently terrible at her job, especially terrible at managing other people? In her new position, she manages a lot of people and does a lot of cases. She could hardly get her shit together for the limited cases that she had when she was having these performance issues. Why would DeSantis do this? My guess is she looks at Ron, he looks at her, Ron DeSantis does, and says, well, that's the kind of person I want. Someone who's not going to do their job. Again, why would you want that? Well, if you're a prosecutor, you might actually have to go after political corruption. Oh, okay. So that might be the issue. Not only is she, again, not a Democrat, but she also will not, go after political appointees. She will not go after corruption. And so she'll sit back and basically do nothing while everyone else, all the other pro-DeSantis attorneys, will continue to go after, the so-called wokeness. That's what's going on here, in my view. Either way, it's very, very clear that Ron DeSantis is not above breaking the law. Again, he literally did in order to get his own way. So I think anybody who thinks that Ron DeSantis would not be a dangerous person, especially if he were to get an even bigger, higher office, say if he runs for president, I think again, he's willing to break the law here, including the First Amendment, so-called free speech. What wouldn't he do? Scary thought, man. Scary thought. Okay. It just amazes me that DeSantis' policies can be framed in such a way to be considered good. Yeah. Again, there are people that want that. They can't wait to go after the transgenders and everyone else, the wokers. Gotta fight the wokeness. Even though by the way, Ron DeSantis has not been winning in the courts. He's been doing pretty poorly when it comes to, for example, the stunts for going after people who did voter fraud. All of his different voter fraud cases. Oops, a lot of them overturned. In fact, almost all of them overturned. And some of his policies when it came to the Stop Woke Act. Again, we're talking about the wokers, right? He's obsessed. They're obsessed with the so-called wokeness. You know what I'm saying?
The wokers.
It's obsessed with it. Well, some of those, policies have been rejected as well by federal courts. It's amazing. But he keeps trying. And that's why Republicans continue to like him, continue to support him, because he's focused, he's all in on the culture wars. By the way, even when he goes after, for example, Disney, right, which I'm not exactly against, but when you look at the reasons why and what he's trying to do, well, I mean, again, culture war stuff. Instead of going after Disney, for example, poor working conditions. For example, I've heard about the Marvel employees being treated very, very poorly in the crunch culture, and then not paying workers at Disney, at the theme parks and stuff, not paying them well, treating them poorly. No, we're not going to go after that. We're going to go after them for wokeness. It's ridiculous. Okay. That's it. Let's go to the next story. Let myself get stun locked here. The public spat between Steven Crowder and the Daily Wire has gotten even nastier. Oh, and I'm here for it. So let them fight. Let them fight. Now, on Thursday, Steven Crowder played a secret recording of his contract negotiations with Daily Wire CEO Jeremy Boring. Again, Jeremy Boring. Okay. Now, look, he was offering Crowder $50 million or $12.5 million a year to Crowder. And by the way, his team, he's got like 6-7 employees. $12.5 million. That's amazing. That's still a ton of money for a contract. And Crowder said, nope. Now, he's going around and he's pretending that he's trying to defend the little guy, protect the little guy. Oh, I just really care about, fighting against the censorships and, against the big tech. That's what I'm fighting. And I'm looking out for the younger creators. That's what I'm doing. I don't believe it at all. Nonetheless, on Thursday, he played this secret recording. Take a listen.
And these people know and acknowledge exactly what's being done to the next generation of creators.
Bench talent, young talent, they don't get deals like this.
So they don't get deals that...
They can be wage slaves for a little bit, come over and make a salary and grow their brand.
That you then own.
Well, I own parts of it. I don't own it. They can, when their contract's up, they can still go out and they'll still be famous. They can keep doing their shows, so go do a show somewhere else. They'll be in a far, far, far better place. You helped make them.
No, not looking at this contract. This contract owns it in perpetuity even after the contract. You're paying a lease but getting ownership. That's what this contract reads.
On the content that we paid to produce, yes.
Wage slave. You get to be a wage slave. See, I've got it recorded. I've got it on tape. I've got it on Talkboy. Okay. Well, look at Home Alone. Yep. Look at that. Wait, he said wage slave. Yeah. Are we at all surprised that that's the kind of phrasing that CEOs of multi-million-dollar companies would say, especially in the right wing? Really? Okay, but anyway, look, the funniest thing about this is Steven Crowder, ironically, is being mad at capitalism. That's literally all it is. It's like, oh, can you believe this contract? Can you believe it? That I'm not getting 100% of everything that I put in? And then also get to take 100% even when I get demonetized because of the racist, homophobic, or transphobic content that I put out? I mean, I don't understand. This is terrible. He doesn't even know. He doesn't even know he's mad at capitalism. I mean, do you know how exploitative these contracts can be? Yeah, dude. Yeah, we do. Yes. And look, by the way, Steven Crowder's contract isn't. Again, $50 million a year. And it wasn't even a contract offer, by the way. It was an initial. It was negotiable. But look, at least $50 million a year. No, I'm sorry, for 4 years. 12 and a half a year. Full creative control. Now, there are the stipulations in there. Now, those stipulations, again, make sense when you're giving Steven Crowder full creative control. Because you know he's going to drop some transphobic shit or some racist shit. Because that's what Steven Crowder does. And by the way, that's why his audience loves him. That's why he's got 6 million subscribers. People eat it up. They love it. And by the way, Daily Wire's like, we love it too. We know our audience eats this shit up. That's why we're willing to pay you $50 million over 4 years. That is a gigantic investment into this company, into Steven Crowder himself. I mean, look, the other thing that's interesting here is look at all the money they have in the right wing. Look at all. I am sitting here with $50 worth of sound panels, foam core paper, and cheap lights. So, I mean, come on. Now, the right wing, you got to look. When you watch right wing content, you know it's very well produced. They've got super slick sets. They've got wonderful graphics. Very, very well-produced content. Now, again, it's too bad everything they say is utter trash, but that trash has a purpose. That purpose is to defend the billionaire class, who ends up, funding them. But anyway, let's see. I have a video here, by the way, of Jeremy Boring pointing out how Steven Crowder is not, he's not really somebody who has been independent. In fact, Steven Crowder has been backed by billionaires pretty much his entire career.
Big tech is in bed with Big Con. The people.
But Steven, as much or more than any of them, a very independent voice. But he's not exactly a self-made man. That's not true. He was paid by PJTV when I met him, which was owned by a billionaire at the time. Then he was paid by CRTV for a number of years, which was owned by a billionaire at the time. Then he was paid by The Blaze, which was subsidized by a billionaire, until Tyler Carden, one of the real genius businessmen in our movement, turned the company around and made it profitable. During all of that time, Steven drove a ton of revenue. He's incredibly valuable. I'm not suggesting that he wasn't driving value. He was. I'm only saying he didn't have to build all of that. He didn't have to think about it. And he didn't necessarily have to be profitable. And he doesn't know for a fact that he was profitable because, as he has said very publicly, all those companies, none of them really shared all the information about what was happening with them. So Steven feels very certain that his show was always profitable, but he doesn't know that his show was profitable. And even if it was, what became of that profit? Most of that profit almost certainly was reinvested into growing the infrastructure and growing the technology and growing the marketing and growing the compliance. That's how business works.
I mean, all that's true. Again, as I mentioned before, going back to that point, right-wing content is very, very highly produced. You know where the money is. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't leftist streamers or lefty streamers that have money. Again, Hassan Piker's a pretty good example of that. And then you also have, like ContraPoints. You have people on the left that do have money and can afford, nice sets. That's not really a thing as much, though, on the left as it is on the right. So, that said, Boring decided to hit back at Crowder on Twitter as well. So he said this, quote, "I would play the part of that call where we talked about our kids, Christmas, and him buying baby formula for his brother's children, but I wouldn't even know how to secretly record my phone calls with my friends." Recording a phone call with your friend, kind of a dick move. I'm just going to say it. Total dick move. And by the way, this is a starting point for the negotiation. As Boring pointed out, hey, this was a start. You could have, yes, you could have made a counter offer. You could have asked for more pay or better terms. Just if you had asked, we would have negotiated. That's what we do. Instead, Steven Crowder threw it back in their face and then came out publicly instead of dealing with it, behind the scenes, and called them Big Con. Now, of course, ironically, they're all a big con. There's nobody in the store that isn't a big con. But just it's not the way that Crowder says. Specifically, Crowder claims that they're working with big tech in order to censor conservatives. No, in reality, they're putting content on YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify because that's where the audience is. They're not like in an alliance with big tech. They're not sitting there with Zuckerberg in the room, saying, "Oh, you must silence Steven Crowder." No, again, you think the Daily Wire likes the rules on Facebook, YouTube, and all these different platforms? No, of course not. They talk about it all the time. Big tech censorship, big tech censorship, big tech censors me. Oh, they're censoring the Daily Wire. They're censoring Matt Walsh. They're censoring all of us. It's not like they like these platforms. Look, they're lefties, myself included, that have issues with these platforms. I mean, I've had content demonetized. Whenever I talk about reproductive rights, or when a right-winger, does violence, and I cover it, those videos get demonetized. I don't see ad revenue from that. And by the way, they're also deprioritized in the algorithms. as well as other videos that I have. So those are serious issues. And again, not only that, but these companies are gigantic and not very transparent in their decisions. They also don't communicate at all. There's no communication. Again, issues for creators, right? But at the end of the day, we all have to post where the people are. And that's it. And by the way, if you get demonetized on those platforms, going back to the Steven Crowder's, like, oh, these stipulations, look at how terrible they are. Well, it wouldn't make sense for the Daily Wire, in this case, or for any company to keep paying someone if they're not bringing in any revenue for their channel. It wouldn't make any sense, right? And then he said in his previous video, could you imagine getting hit by a car and going into work and losing $100,000 a day? No, bitch, I don't have $100,000. I don't have $100,000 to lose. Nobody else does either. Very, very few people. I mean, you're sitting there claiming that, I'm a man of the people. You will all understand. No, we don't. We don't have that money. And by the way, we do also lose money when we can't work. I know it's a shock to you, but this happens to everyday people all the time. On top of that, by the way, a lot of Americans, regular people, we don't have health insurance. Either because we can't afford it, we can't afford the premiums or the copays, deductibles. Don't have paid sick leave. It's like he just found out that capitalism is A, exploitative, and B, contracts are bad sometimes, and that working conditions can be pretty terrible. He just found that out, but only when it allegedly applies to him. But, oh my God, I can't believe how exploitative some of these contracts are. When again, it's really a pretty good contract. You know how many people would be like, oh, $12.5 million a year? Sign me up. Sign me up. There are people that will cut off fingers to get $50 million. So, and by the way, for full creative control of your content, that's a sweet deal. But again, his entire issue here, ironically, is capitalism, but he doesn't get it. Maybe it's just a bit, because there's no way in hell that he actually cares about the average person. He can't even relate to the average person in any of his examples. That said, there's more response to this. So we'll go to Candace Owens. So first, Candace Owens, basically, on her show, called him a bitch. Again, I'm not a fan of Candace Owens, but that shit's funny. And she continued going after him on Tim Pool's show. Take a look.
Please use your common sense. It's not even because I work for Daily Wire. It is because he personally he's lying, and he insulted me. And during his lying campaign, he's still lying. He even said something in this video where he's like, now they're sending out their, no. You took, if you're gonna aim and you're gonna hit somebody with shrapnel and it's gonna be me, you better aim correctly, because I don't like shit like this, okay? I have been quiet. I know Steven Crowder treats people like absolute trash. It's a known thing in the conservative movement. Ask anybody that works at the Blaze. Any person who's ever had a show on the Blaze, how Steven Crowder treats people. By the way, you want to talk about contract negotiations? Why doesn't somebody reach out to Not Gay Jared, right, who used to be with Steven Crowder, and figure out why he can't speak? Why doesn't Steven Crowder release Not Gay Jared from his NDA? I don't like shit like this, is all I'm saying. I don't like it.
Let him fight. Ooh, let him fight. I'm sorry, but I sit there, I'm enjoying this. Too much. Now, look, she's not the only one who went off. And by the way, it seems like Candace Owens is taking that very, very personally. All right. Good stuff. Now, Ben Shapiro also took it a little personally. And he responded on Twitter to Crowder. He said this: "It's nasty to attack my company and Daily Wire Plus host as Big Con by lying about the meaning of a non-binding term sheet. It's despicable to plan weeks in advance to attack my best friend and your friend by setting up and secretly taping a phone call, all to grow your email list. So look, that email list is like the Mug Club or whatever. Okay. And look, on all these recent, shows, Steven Crowder went through this and he's like, Mug Club, you got to sign up for Mug Club. You know why? Because he gets the money from that. That's a direct membership to Steven Crowder. It goes all into his pocket, as opposed to any sort of contract where he gets, yes, a certain amount of money. And then, of course, the company also shares revenue as well. That's generally how it works. So now, here's the other thing, right? When it comes to friends, I've kind of learned in this career that friends are few and far between. You don't really want to make friends in this avenue, in this arena. That said, I've made a few and they're pretty good. They're pretty good people, right? And when you get to a certain point, there are people that inevitably want to use you, and those if you're a bad person, you would want to use. It's really nasty in media, just like it is in politics. Now, look, I'm not at that point. I'm never going to be at that point. I'm not interested in using other people. But I, of course, am always careful about people that might want to, if I ever get to a large enough point, to be used. I think it is very gross. And by the way, this kind of thing does happen on the left. A great example of this is Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin went through and basically used TYT to springboard himself and then to go over to right-wing media. Specifically, saying that that he was friends with Anna Kasparian and Jen Uger, they play basketball together, and the whole time he was pretending to be their friends in order to catapult his career and make more money. And again, that's not the only example we've seen. So again, when it comes to so-called friends, again, Steven Crowder, ironically, is doing to the Daily Wire, or pretty close to what Dave Rubin did to TYT. So I think that is very, an apt comparison, a very apt comparison to that. That's what's going on. Look, and by the way, Steven Crowder, I have no doubt that Candace Owens was being true, correct when she was saying, ask people who worked at the Blaze how Steven Crowder treats people. There are stories, lots of stories, about Steven Crowder being an absolute dickhead behind the scenes. And of course, we see how he is on the screen too. He's an absolute dickhead. And look, the reason, of course, is that he wants to say that he is the only true conservative. That he is the only one that's fighting against big tech censorship. Because he's going to be a competitor to Daily Wire. He's building his own network. And he wants people to come over to him, to watch him, to support him. He wants to be the boot. So now Shapiro had some more tweets. He said, once more, if you actually cared about the supposedly horrific non-binding first offer term sheet offering $50 million over 4 years, Jeremy reads it line by line and he links that video. It's quite simple. If your show loses money, you lose money. That is how capitalism works. Yeah, exactly. Again, the irony is Steven Crowder, apparently against capitalism. I thought he lived like a capitalist every single day. Apparently not. He just figured out how it works. Oh my God, did you know? Did you know that capitalism is like this? Yes. Yes, we did. By the way, Ben Shapiro continues by saying, you know who knows this, Steven Crowder. That's why he has a piss off YouTube segment in which he deliberately does not say things that will get him kicked off YouTube, because he's had it happen before, and directs people behind his paywall. Shapiro added, quote, "He must be a show for YouTube or something." Ooh. Again, this keeps getting better and better, nastier and nastier. I love it. Again, let him fight. Let him fight. Okay. Let's move on. Let's go to some stuff happening in Iowa. I love a grift fight. True. True. Ravaging Wolverine says trash knows trash. True. All right. Iowa Republicans recently introduced legislation that would make poor people's lives even more miserable. Now, this bill, introduced by Representative Holt Grassley, would impose sharp restrictions on the kinds of food that people on the SNAP program can buy. So now, it gets pretty ridiculous. According to Axios, the bill would restrict people on the SNAP program to purchase only specific things, a very small list of things. Here's an example. According to Axios, proposed restrictions include no white grains. People can only purchase 100% whole wheat bread, brown rice, and wheat pasta. No baked, refried, or chili beans. Only black, red, and pinto beans. No fresh meat at all. Only canned products like canned tuna or canned salmon. No cheese. No cheese. Beans and rice for you. Maybe if you're good, you can get a side of a canned tuna. Wow. There's more. The Des Moines Area Religious Council, DMARC, an interfaith group that operates the largest food pantry in Iowa, noted in a statement earlier this week that if the bill passed, Iowans could no longer use their SNAP benefits to purchase meat, nuts, seeds, flour, butter, cooking oil, soup, canned fruits, and vegetables, frozen prepared foods, snack foods, herbs, spices, not even salt or pepper. Again, plain beans and rice for you. It goes further, though. The bill would also, for the first time, create an asset test for the SNAP program, limiting household assets to $2,750 or $4,250 if one member of the household happens to be a senior over 60. It exempts just one vehicle, making households with 2 cars ineligible. Oh, see, you have a second car. Obviously, Richie McRich, Scrooge McRich, okay? Yeah. Oh, you got a second car. You must be rolling in it. You don't need food. We're not gonna help you. Go sell your second car. Yeah, maybe you'll get a couple $100 from it. Because I'm guessing that any household at the point of where you need to be on food stamps, you're not running around with a Rolls Royce. Okay? You ain't got no Mercedes. It's going to be a beater. I mean, now here's the thing about that, right? In America, you need mainly 2 incomes to survive. That's most working class people need to have both parents work. Both people in the household work. Okay? If you get rid of one of the cars, well, that's going to make it difficult for one of these people to get to work. Again, if they work at different places at the same time, that's going to cause some issues, right? One of those parents might not be able to work which actually reduces their income further, makes them more dependent. Unbelievably cruel. Unbelievably cruel. But understand, of course, that's the point. The point is to be as cruel as possible. Now, that said, other groups condemn the bill. The Iowa Hunger Coalition condemned the bill, saying that its food restrictions and asset limits will make it more difficult to qualify for SNAP. In the bill, they said it would restrict SNAP participants' ability to make their own food choices, take food away from Iowans, and increase hunger and food insecurity in our state. Now, Iowa already has a big problem. According to Feeding America, roughly 229,500 people, including 80,160 children, face food insecurity in that state. Now, if you reduce the ability for people to get on SNAP, and then reduce what they are able to buy on SNAP, you're going to make food insecurity worse. Because again, you're massively limiting someone's diet to beans and rice. They're not going to get a lot of nutrition from this. Certainly not a varied enough diet. So, now Lena Greenberg, another critic, says, and she's co-executive director of the group Indivisible, said, this is so profoundly cruel and petty. Yeah, it is so profoundly cruel and petty. It's as simple as that. Sarah Bowen, a sociologist who studies food inequality, noted in a tweet on Thursday that Republicans have been trying to destroy SNAP for years, animated by the lie that SNAP recipients are stocking up on lobster and steak. Let me tell you what, I've been on SNAP before. You ain't getting lobster and steak. If you do buy a steak, it better last a whole week. Being poor, I don't think they understand. Being poor is hard. It's very hard. It's actually very, not only costly, which is, again, you wouldn't think, right? But also, it's incredibly time consuming. Give me an example, right? In order to make these meals work, you got to find the best deals, right? To stretch your dollar as much as you can, down to the penny. Crunch the numbers of what you can afford. That takes time. Plan out single meals for the week, for example, how much you're gonna spend on that. And then you have to go out and actually find those meals. And that, of course, takes time. Going perhaps even to special stores that are, for example, Aldi's. Or your Save-A-Lots. Whatever discount grocery stores that you can find to get better deals on things. Again, takes time and effort, right? Because look, you have to do that. If you use up those benefits for the month, that's it. It's done. There is no more food. There is no more money for food. And not to mention, again, these special stores sometimes don't have the things that you need. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they're far away. And sometimes they're not. It all depends on where you live. And look, when trying to find foods that will last a month, you also have to make sure that you can find those things. That also massively limits you. You can't get things that'll spoil quickly. And that, of course, has a big impact on your diet as well. You don't get fresh vegetables. Again, making meals with that stuff takes time. It is quite time consuming. And then, of course, on top of that, you're expected to either have a job or look for a job training. If you have kids, take care of them. If you have family members, you're also taking care of them in the households. So look, all of that in together, it's stressful being poor. Being poor is a full-time job. No one's having a good time on food stamps. Believe me. And as Common Dream notes, SNAP recipients are already limited on what they can purchase at the grocery store using their benefits. Like I said, though, Iowa Republicans are expanding that those restrictions. Bowen is quoted as saying, quote, "This is the most ridiculous proposal I've seen. No chicken or ground beef, no chili beans, no American cheese. No cheese." And as Todd Dorman of the Iowa Gazette explained in a column on Thursday, that legislation would also not be fiscally responsible. Think about it. This, according to Republicans, the reason that they want to do this, we're spending too much money on the SNAP program. We've got to scale it back. We're just trying to have the money for it. Well, this legislation, according to Dorman, would require the Department of Health and Human Services to seek a federal waiver allowing Iowa to scrap an already restricted federal list of approved foods and replace it with a list of food available to recipients of aid to women, infants, and children. That, of course, it costs, it's time and money. Got to get the lawyers, got to draft that up. It's got to go through, the proper, I guess, through the proper chain, of authority. You get it signed off. So you're just wasting time at that point. When they could be doing other things. Dorman also added, beyond now that draconian wisdom, the bill would also force recipients to jump through far more regulatory hoops to become eligible and stay on SNAP, wrapping recipients tightly in red tape and costing the state millions more to administer the program. And I think that's really important because it really shows you what this is about. It's not about saving the state money. It's about punishing people who are in poverty. They believe that if they punish you enough, humiliate you enough, make you suffer enough, that you are going to stop being poor. That's what this is about. You know what stops people from being poor? More money. Literally, that's it. And by the way, I don't just mean giving more money. I mean better jobs, higher wages, more affordable housing, and of course, expanding Social Security for those who cannot work, who are disabled, who are most likely on the SNAP program as well. I mean, really, yeah, that would, those things would help. Now, Republicans pushing for that? No. Pushing for the opposite. They're just trying to make people who are already dealing with enough even more miserable for no real reason. The cruelty is the point. They believe in making other people suffer. And unsurprisingly, there are two groups that actually support this bill. One is the Florida-based Opportunity Solutions Project. Ironic name. Basically, as Dorman writes, they send their minions across the country to cut holes in the social safety net and oppose policies like the Medicaid expansion. Because, how dare they have healthy people? Which, again, healthier people cost the state less resources. Cost hospitals less in resources. When you can actually treat people, before things get serious, or illnesses have a chance to get more serious, you reduce the cost. And as a side effect, I guess, or as a bonus, you get to live. I know, people living. Weird, but again, the pro-life party doesn't really care about that. They don't really care if people live. Not if they're poor. Now, that group, has the Opportunity Solutions Project, is part of a web of conservative think tanks and bill mills bankrolled by wealthy donors, who, again, as Dorman writes, think that if you just make poor people hungry and sick enough, they'll get out their bootstraps. The bootstraps! You got no boots. Where are you going to get the straps from? The other group, of course, is the right-wing Iowans for Tax Relief, which, again, is just another front group for millionaires, billionaires, corporations. But they have managed to buy off 40 Iowa Republicans that have, introduced and co-sponsored this disgusting piece of legislation. Are trying to screw over poor people. That's what's going on in Iowa. Disgusting. All right. Real quick, let's get to the last story here. House Democrats have introduced a constitutional amendment on Thursday to overturn Citizens United. So now, let me give you some details on this. Basically, Citizens United prohibited the government from restricting political campaign spending by corporations, nonprofits, and unions. Now, this amendment, if passed, would allow Congress and state governments to enact what they call reasonable viewpoint neutral limitations on campaign funding, including restricting corporations from spending unlimited amounts of money to influence elections. Now, this sounds great. Wonderful. But there's a few problems. Not with the legislation itself that I could see, but in the fact that it's not going to go anywhere. So now, Representative Adam Schiff had introduced this amendment, and he said in a press release that it would close legal loopholes that corporations and other wealthy groups have exploited for far too long. Schiff has introduced an amendment to overturn Citizens United every year since 2013. And again, we've seen that it's, well, never went anywhere. So now, in a quote, he said, Citizens United was one of the most egregious enablers of special interest money, but it was only in the latest in the long line of Supreme Court cases that opened the floodgates. To truly rein in dark money, we must amend our Constitution. Now, look, he's right about that. I think that is the only way. But at the same time, Republicans control the House. And yes, Democrats have the Senate. But remember, probably about 80% of our politicians take corporate money. So, again, I would be very, well, let's just say this. The chance of something like this getting through any Congress at this point is impossible. It's never going to happen. Not through this. Now, there are ways that you can get around Congress. The corruption. But this is not one of them. And so it feels like a stunt. Even though, again, on the facts, he is correct. And look, let me give you some, details in case you're not familiar with some of the court cases that have led up to this. Back in 1976, the Supreme Court had ruled in Buckley Vallejo that independent expenditures didn't pose a risk of political corruption. Which, I mean, come on. That's ridiculous, right? No, it's absolutely ridiculous. Of course it's corruption. There was not only a risk of political corruption, there was the guarantee of political corruption. Of course independent expenditures are corruption. Now, following that decision, there was the First National Bank of Boston versus Bellotti. Now, look, if Buckley Vallejo had opened the gates, then Bellotti allowed corporations to walk right through it. The court had stated in Bellotti that there was no support, quote, for the proposition that speech that otherwise would be within the protection of the First Amendment loses that protection simply because its source is a corporation. Now, that is absolutely absurd. Yeah, of course there's support for that proposition. Corporations are not human beings. Corporations are fictional legal entities that, by the way, are there to shield executives and human beings, the human beings that are running the corporation, the board members, executives, etc., CEO, from legal liability in case the corporation does something wrong. Not a human being. There is that quote here. I think it was Robert Reich who said, I believe a corporation is a person when Texas executes one. They're not people. They're not human beings. They're legal fictions. Why are they getting speech rights? The same kinds of speech rights. Now, yes, people work there. But you know what's funny is that the corporations that are allowed these speech rights and therefore give independent expenditures to PACs, super PACs, etc., campaign contributions, well, those don't really represent the workers that are working there. So think about it this way. You know, you're working at McDonald's, okay? McDonald's decides the corporation is going to give to Republicans. How's that representing you? Remember, your labor is making McDonald's money. Again, that's the whole point of you working for them. You make them money, and then they give you a tiny little bit of it in return. But they take that money that you generated with your labor, and then they go and bribe a politician, give it to a Republican, who is then going to vote against your own best interests by making sure they never raise the minimum wage. That's what this sick system, this corrupt system, allows to happen. Not just allows, it was designed this way. Yet both of these cases had underpinned the other incredibly pro-corporate cases that made Citizens United possible. And so, again, if you would want to get rid of the corruptive, and I do, by the way, influence of money in politics, you would have to go after those as well. Again, the only reason Citizens United was even able to stand is because of those other cases that were decided before it. That makes me believe that this is performative. That this amendment was introduced by Representatives Dean Phillips, Pramila Jayapal, and Jim McGovern. Okay, great, but it's not going to do anything. It's not going to pass. That's the problem. It's performative. Why not do that when you would actually have enough people in the House and the Senate? They didn't do that. They didn't pass that. Why? Again, 80% of Congress takes donations from corporations. When you have that system, do you ever expect anyone, the people who are receiving these donations, to ever vote to stop them? No, never. That's why we cannot trust Congress. Why you have to go around Congress and actually go for a constitutional amendment. Don't rely on these people. We're going to continue to put up the same dog and pony show, kabuki theater, and say, oh, look at that. We introduced this amendment that's not going to go anywhere. We're fighting for you while we're also taking corporate money. No, don't believe them. Get involved on your own. There are groups out there that are fighting to actually get a constitutional amendment. Join them. And don't wait for Adam Schiff, Pramila Jayapal, or any of these people, politicians, to come save you. You have to do it yourself. You have to work to get these state legislatures, call for a constitutional convention to add this amendment. It's the only way it's going to work. Otherwise, it's just going to continue to be more of the same, more of the corruption. Okay. Wasn't out of the Douglas court? I want to say yes, but I'm not 100%. Now that I think about it. I have memory issues. Welcome to ADHD. All right, so look, that's all I got today. I know I'm massively out of time. Massively over time. Jules T asks, why is this country not up in flames? I'll never know. Look at what's going on in France. I didn't get to that story today. France, Macron. I don't have that French accent, so I can't say his name correctly. But Macron, whatever. He raised the retirement age from 62 to 64. Okay. France is on fire as a result right now. And you know what? Good. I'd love to see more of that here. Republicans are about to try to raise the retirement age to 67. And again, we're so incredibly polite in this country. Whereas France is like, no, we're going to burn the whole thing down. We're done with this. Don't you dare touch our retirement. Gotta hand it to the French. They know how to get it done. Anyway, there's that. Wow, that is probably the most hilarious and insane Facebook message I've ever seen. God bless you, Peter. Patriot. America. Love it. Love it. Okay. Anyway. Fun. So, everybody, please have a great weekend. We will see you all back here Monday, same time, same place as always. Thank you. Gabby Mathis, thank you for the super chat. As always, I love a dragon shirt. Have the same one. Also, Rip Dave Crosby. Ah, yes, of Crosby, Stills and Nash. I don't know. I'm not a music guy. Nor can I really remember all that much. But when it comes to like bands and band names. But anyway, Flaco Westos, thank you for the 200 bits. Appreciate that. And the Tier 1 sub. The gifted sub. And sometimes young. Oh, yeah. That's true. All right. Again, we'll see you back here Monday. Love you all. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. Have a great weekend.
Beta. Oh yeah.
The Republican Party's racist.
Oh my God. He admitted. Internet. It's not a salami sandwich. Disappointed.
Peachtree dish.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.
In Venezuela.
Fired!